Not easy being the fastest quarterback you've never seen. I'll be right back. There's no quicker way to get into DFS. Play Super Draft today and see for yourself.
We're behind. They're all fired up. What we got to do? First place, our defense has got to go out there and take the ball. Then when we get the ball, we got to have 11 people that's going to do their job and try to score every time you get the football. If we do that, we'll be all right. Do that, we'll be all right.
There we go. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Football University here with Caddell, former University of Alabama wide receiver, where we talk anything and everything football related, and we try to find a way to bring it back to Alabama. You know, we talk NFL, we talk college. We got a lot going on. Alabama spring training, NFL draft news, you know, we cover it all. We find a way to bring it back to Alabama. So shouts out to everybody, all the fans. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to the student section. Shouts out to William Bryan. He says, roll tide, everyone. We know we roll tide here, but we welcome all SEC fans here at SEC at Football University, not SECU, but we will talk about how Alabama is kind of the anchor
Except for
of the
Auburn. Whoa.
Except for Auburn. Listen, Hugh Freeze, we're going to talk about it. Listen, Hugh Freeze has been, you know, doing a bit chirping. So RTR to everybody. So let's get to it. Since we're talking about Alabama, roll tide, let's say, listen, Alabama football spring training is upon us. And to my first point, how I mentioned how Alabama is kind of what it is about the SEC. We're the anchor, you know, except for Auburn. You know, listen, Hugh Freeze has been making some, you know, comments about Alabama. You know, it's very interesting to see. But, you know, Alabama is the story. Everybody either likes Alabama or hates Alabama. Either they say they love the SEC or not. It is what it is. But shouts out to the student section, William Bryan, Lori Caddell. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. But I want to talk about Alabama football. I want to start with spring training. Last weekend, the big video that went viral was the pass I think every Bama fan was waiting to see about spring training. You know, the pass from Jalen Milroe to Ja'Cory Brooks, it kind of broke the internet last week, and it made me bring to my first topic. You know, I'm excited about Alabama spring training. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how this quarterback position plays out with Milroe and Ty Simpson. But man, shouts out to the camera crew for Alabama making that shot and just dissecting the play. This is what we do at Football University. We talk everything, anything, and everything Alabama, but breaking down that play, Ja'Cory Brooks, ran a route on Kool-Aid McKinstry, and it was great coverage by Kool-Aid, but the ball had to be in a perfect position. The ball placement on this throw was really good. It was pretty elite. So everybody was trying to figure out who threw the pass. But it was Milroe, shouts out to him. So it's going to be interesting. I think that kind of, got the fireworks going for this competition. So speaking of Alabama football, so I want to talk about how, I talked about Brooks and Kool-Aid. I want to talk about it from the other perspective of Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid McKinstry, the product out of Pinson Valley High School, Birmingham, Alabama product. I think he's going to be probably the number one cornerback off the board. But I want to talk about the things that we need Kool-Aid to do for us to go to the next level. We know how elite of a talent he is at the cornerback position. I feel he's going to be a leader in that secondary role. But, man, you look at Kool-Aid, top talent, the year he played last year, locking down, certain receivers. I think having Coach T. Rob kind of coach the secondary, have Coach Saban, he's going to be called on to be that leader. But you look at Kool-Aid, I know he's going to give us the defensive plays, but I want to talk about different types of levels that we need Kool-Aid to kind of take the step. He was the punt returner last year. He led the SEC in punt return yards, but we need Kool-Aid to really take at least two of those punts to the crib. I mean, you look at foundational players on Coach Saban's team. You look at guys like a Jamison Williams, and yes, Jamison Williams, I want to give him his flowers now. He had the injury last year, but when he came in and played for the Detroit Lions, being the, first round pick for the Detroit Lions, he made plays. And I think Jamison Williams is going to be an NFL breakout star next year coming up for the Detroit Lions. But I say this about Jamison Williams, and I want to give him his flowers because not only how he was a great player offensively, but he was a great special teams player. He was a great gunner. He was a great kickoff returner. I mean, you look at that offense, he just really took our offense, our special teams, our team to another level when he's on the field. So I think in order for our teams, our players, and Alabama's football team to be to the next level, we got to have key guys like Kool-Aid, Malachi Moore, all these guys be elite special teams players. That's what's going to, separate Alabama and really get Alabama back to being dominant. So let's shout out to the student section. A lot of RTRs. Spencer said no defending the perfect pass. Listen, it was a great pass by Milroe. So I just want to talk about Kool-Aid, Brooks. We talked about the receivers kind of last week. But I want to talk about the Kool-Aid, the special teams, how we need players that are really exceptional on that special team side of the ball and on either offensive defense, because, it's kind of like old school football. High school, you never come off the field. You usually play offense, defense, special teams. But I think that in order for us to have more guys that can, get the feel of the game quicker, that way we can start dominating our opponents, we need to have those guys step up special teams wise, as well as playing offensive defense. That's what you look at Derrick Henry when he played. He was exceptional on kickoff coverage. You look at Will Anderson, going to be a top 3 pick this year. Not only was he a defensive end, but listen, he was on the field goal team, showing that special teams type of influence. And I think elite players don't want to come off the field. They want to do what they can to help their team win. So, listen, I want to shout out Jamison Williams. Not only is he going to be a breakout star, but I want to give him his flowers to how he played special teams at the University of Alabama. And special teams is very important. It really shows what type of player you are. And I think we have more of these 5 stars, 4 stars are playing really well on the special teams front, we're going to be elite. We're going to be successful. So let's get to the student section. Let's go. I'm so excited. Matt, do you really think Kool-Aid will be returning punts this year, or will it be Sweet Justice Hayes on the team? I think you look at a Justice Hayes, and if people don't know about Justice Hayes, this guy is really good. One of the top probably 5 running backs coming out of this year. We pulled him from Georgia up there in Buford High School. All the talented Isaiah Bond was on this team. Really a lot of talent there. But Justice Hayes, son of Vernon Hayes, the Georgia legend, we're going to talk about Georgia a little bit later. But, for us to get him to Tuscaloosa, you look at his tape. I mean, Justice Hayes is that guy. I mean, explosive running back. Kind of reminds me of a Mark Ingram with I will say a slight berries to him. He could do it all. But, for me, when I saw him special teams, playing in high school, they played Thompson High School, state champions, all the talent from the state of Alabama down there in Alabaster. You look at Justice Hayes and the special teams plays that I saw him do, not necessarily punt returns, but I will say Justice Hayes will be an effective running back. And I think you can kind of utilize him as the kickoff returner. The kickoff returns, a lot of teams want to do the fair catch, but I think we could capitalize on taking some of those kickoff returns to the house. I don't know if it's a Justice Hayes. I don't know if it's a Kool-Aid. I don't know if it's a Kobe Prentice. I don't know if it's an Isaiah Bond. But I think regardless, whoever it is, we need to play the guys back there who are going to put points on the board, get us into, special teams has a lot of effects on the game, but we could take advantage not only of field position, but getting points on the board, punt return, special teams, getting field position. I think that will help Alabama to being back dominant because Bama is in a, iffy type of situation with Georgia coming off winning 2 national championships. Back-to-back national championships. So Bama's we don't have time to waste. The time is now. So Justice Hayes, I think whoever it is, we need to have good special teams back there. Let's stay in the student section. Stephen Hicks says the media is buzzing about our QB room and how Bama is getting back to smash mouth football. Yes, I think with the leadership of Tommy Rees coming in, being an offensive, creative, young mind, develops quarterbacks, we're going to get back to bully ball, time of possession, dominating the line of scrimmage. So it's going to be interesting to see. So I had a few. Before we move off this topic, I kind of want to backtrack and go back to this previous point by Spencer talking about who will be returning punts. And since we're talking about special teams, shouts out to Nick Saban Jr., Special Teams Podcast. I think it's important. We're talking about Tommy Rees, which leads me to my next point. In order for Alabama's offense to go to the next level, it is important that we keep our punter on the bench. When it gets to third down, we need to be converting third downs and getting in the end zone. And my prime example, if you look at the previous football season, NFL season last year, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Isaiah Pacheco, Eric Bieniemy, Andy Reid, and you look at Jalen Hurts, and we love Jalen Hurts, probably number 2 in my category for MVP this past year. I think he outplayed, Mahomes in the game, so to speak. But you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, that offense, they never punted the ball. When I watched the Super Bowl, and I watched the Eagles all year, I only noticed their punter to the Super Bowl. So I think it's important for Alabama, Tommy Rees, Coach Saban, get back to controlling the line of scrimmage. And when we have possession of the ball, let's score points, let's maintain possession, and let's keep our punter off the field. Like he just needs to be working on his golf swing. We don't need him to be coming out doing much work because we are grounding and pounding, putting points on the board, dominating the line of scrimmage, running the ball to win the game, and throwing the ball to put up points. So I had to get to that point. So thanks to the student section. Let's get to another topic right here. Laura Caddell says we can't get comfortable if we're dominating games. I think the players sometimes get too relaxed. unfortunately, the game's changes. You have a lot of momentum shift. If someone gets hurt, always be prepared, ready, and don't let up. That sounds like Coach Caddell over there. Sounds like the Lord Caddell. Yeah, we got to be ready. I think it's important. You look at spring training, being able to develop young talent. You have guys there. We redshirted a ton of guys last year. I mean, you look at a Jeremiah Alexander at that outside linebacker position. Ty Simpson, I think we're going to be calling on him as well as Milroe to really be effective in order for Alabama to go to the next level. So in order for us to dominate, Alabama's got to be able to control the line of scrimmage. And since we're talking about controlling the line of scrimmage, I want to flip it to the defensive side of the ball. I know we talked about the offensive line, led by Coach Wolf and led by Coach Wolf. So this gets to my point. Thank you, Jeff, for getting back to smash mouth football, winning in the trenches, bully ball, not being too finesse, but being physical. I want to talk about the defensive side of the ball, maintaining the defensive tackles. I think in order for Alabama's defense to get back to being dominant, I'm talking about Deron Payne, Raekwon Davis, Jaron Reed, Mathis, Byron Young, even last year. Alabama's going to have to get more physical and dominant defensive tackles. I mean, you look at our defensive tackles, we've kind of had a drop off the past couple of years. And I think Alabama's got to get back to being elite inside defensive tackles that know how to kind of play the box, stop the run, get pressures on the quarterback, disruptive tackles for loss, getting off blocks, taking on double teams, stopping. So in order for Alabama's defense to get back being elite, our defensive tackles are going to have to be dominant. Back to the Terrence Cody days. You look at a Jaheim Otis, a James Smith. We know Keon Keeley, Jans Pierre coming off the edge, but I'm talking about strictly from the defensive tackle position. We need guys up front that we play the right run fits. We need to have more defensive tackles step up and be dominant. And once our D tackles get back to being dominant, that is going to have a domino effect. It's going to help the secondary. It's going to help the safeties. It's going to help the linebackers. So it's going to help a lot. So it's important that our defensive tackles get back to dominant. I'm confident in Freddie Roach, former teammate of mine. I think he does a great job, not only in recruiting, but I know we need to take the next step from the defensive tackle position. So let's get to our next topic. Let's get to our next topic. So we talked about Bama Spring, Milroe. We talked about, certain positions, Smash Mouth, Kool-Aid, him, being even that much more effective because we know how talented he is. We just want him to be dominant, on the special team side. We talked about Jamison Williams. I want to bring it back to the draft. Since we're going to the NFL, let's start with the draft, but let's talk about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry might get traded to the Eagles. You don't know if the Titans want to trade up to number 10, maybe try to find that quarterback. The Titans and the Eagles kind of have a crazy relationship in the draft. They traded away A.J. Brown in that crazy draft a couple of years ago with Philadelphia. So you never know. Howie Roseman might be able to finagle something. But can you imagine Derrick Henry with Jalen Hurts in that backfield? Man, that's a lot of firepower. You look at that NFC East division. You don't know, what if they added in Ezekiel Elliott? What if they added Bijan Robinson? Philly, they're going to be – this draft is a very important draft for a lot of NFL teams. And so since we're talking about the draft, we got to start with the one and only. That guy is Bryce Young. I just got to start with it. Listen, I do think the top two players coming off the board are Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. when it comes to Bryce Young and breaking news, I had it in my notes to talk about Bryce. They had the quarterback pro days and AR-15 and Will Levis. We'll talk about that later, but I want to talk about Bryce Young. Breaking news, Bryce was in California training with, Jalen Hurts and some other quarterbacks, and news just broke that the Indianapolis Colts, and we know Jim Irsay, the owner, at a press conference not too long ago said, listen, that Alabama guy is not bad. So when you hear NFL owners talk about certain players, I would not be surprised. So the news that's broke about the Colts are actually working out Bryce Young and CJ Stroud out in California. That could be big because now at first the Colts was going to be one of my topics. Like, why aren't they being aggressive? Why aren't they going to get Lamar? Are they going to settle for an AR-15 and Will Levis and try to compete with a Patrick Mahomes? No, that's not going to work. I think they have to trade up, get a Bryce Young. And so to hear this, you just can't work out Bryce Young. It's a big chess match. Guys are throwing smoke screens and, not trying to show their hands, trying to play a little poker, be discreet, a little deceptive. But you look at the Indianapolis Colts, I think they need to make a splash with this. And they are a possible team that I feel like can really sneak up and really, jump maybe the Houston Texans in the AFC to that number one spot. And if you're gonna jump, which I think the Carolina Panthers did, I think you need the guy from NFL Network, Peter Schrager, made a great point about how you need to go up. You don't need to go get the safe pick. And a lot of players, analysts, experts are gonna say, well, Bryce Young might not have the height, so you take the safer pick, which is CJ Stroud. Listen, if I'm a GM, and this is what we do at Football University, hit that like, subscribe, or Football U. If I'm a GM, I'm not trading up for the safe pick. I'm trading up to get the main pick. And to me, if I'm a quarterback needy team, it's not that hard. I'm going to get Bryce Young. I mean, this guy is a dynamic playmaker. I mean, if you put the weapons around him, protect him offensive line, give him a decent defense, I mean, you put the scheme around him, the sky's the limit. So, listen, the Colts, I think they're making noise. Just try to make noise for Bryce Young. So let's stay in right there talking the NFL draft. We talked about, the quarterbacks. We talked about Bama spring training. We talked about Derrick Henry, the Eagles. I want to talk about the other quarterbacks, and everybody's going to talk about Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. I think they're 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B in my book. But I want to say this. You had AR-15 last week, Will Levis, they weren't the main events like Bryce Young, but, they came afterwards. So, they were trying to outdo and go viral. And so AR-15, he puts all the measurables. I mean, this guy on paper, you look at the numbers, the athletics, the height, running the 40. I mean, this guy has all the numbers and the measurables to be successful and explosiveness. But man, at his pro day, I think he did great, but he had one pass when he threw the ball and it hit the ceiling. And then people were like, oh my gosh, this guy can throw it crazy. I'm like, is that really a flex hitting the ceiling of an indoor facility? I said this the past couple of weeks. I don't think guys need to get caught up in showing off the big arm. Like, we know you're in shorts and t-shirt, you got scripted plays. We know this, but I said, you look at players like Bryce, I believe you need to focus on accuracy. How do you maintain poise, leadership, making the right plays, getting in the right play? I think those things are more important than just showing off a strong arm. So I wanted to bring that up because that's what we do here at Football University. Talk about all the drafts. Since we're talking quarterbacks, so you have AR-15. Will Levis, I'm not as high on Will Levis, and I'll say it again. I haven't been as high. I know some pundits want to put them up high, but it got me thinking. Speaking of Will Levis and AR-15, these guys did not play in their bowl game. And to me, and I was like, how do you feel not playing in your bowl game, basically giving up on your team and saying, hey, I'm going to focus on the draft, and then coming back into that same facility and being like, yeah, wearing the school colors. I'm like, I think, to me, maybe I'm old school, but I think you have to play. To me, that shows a lot about your character. On the other hand, you look at a Bryce Young, a Will Anderson, guys who did it the right way, graduated, competitive, being the best team leader, the captain. They put their mouth where their money was and played that game. So I think that's important for players. And I had to bring that up. I was like, I just think that's kind of weird not playing in the bowl game, but coming back to the pro day. But you never know. That's how it is. It is a business. Here at Football University, we're here to talk about all different angles, whether you agree or not or disagree. But I wanted to bring that up in my next topic. So we're kind of going to stay on the NFL, but in the meantime, let's get in the student section. I mean, y'all are hot on fire tonight. Joe Stapleton says, I can't wait for the season to start. Offensive defense want to show the naysayers and stop them bullies from three-peeling. Listen, speaking of Georgia, not wanting them to three-peat, let's get into it. Let's dive into this SEC talk. So we talked about the NFL. We're going to take a pause or intermission discussing about the NFL draft and everything. Let's talk about the SEC. We started with Alabama, and which leads me to my next topic, man. Listen, Alabama, if you're an Alabama fan, this is going to be more of a therapeutic type of a session right here. You have to look at, like Jeff Stapleton said, like Alabama's got to get back to being dominant, because right now you look at Georgia, and I live in the state of Georgia, and I'm surrounded by Bulldogs fans. So I know it's all love, and I work with I cover Tennessee, I cover Vol fans, and it is what it is. But listen, if you look at the SEC and you look at the SEC West versus the SEC East, and I know we're going to different divisions, but listen, the facts are the facts. We gotta step up. It's been 2 years since we basically won a national championship, and in those 2 years, Georgians have won. So if you're Alabama, I mean, you have to embrace it. But you can kind of see a shift in the SEC. Is it more of the SEC East because Georgia has won the past 2 national championships? Is the SEC East kind of rising up on the SEC West? I mean, you look at Georgia, you look at the influx of Tennessee, Josh Heupel. You look at, what they did to us, what we got to stop. You look at South Carolina. I mean, the SEC is kind of making a lot of noise. So you look at the West, you got obviously Alabama, you got LSU, but after that, I mean, A&M, Ole Miss would probably be competitive. A&M, I'm not going to be disrespectful to the SEC. Everybody's going to bring their A game. But, if you look at the East compared to the West, it's kind of a little shift. So, like I said, from Alabama, you're kind of in a different perspective. Not winning the national championship within 2 years. These 2 years have felt like 10 years. Just felt for forever not seeing Alabama be so dominant. So, it is a very interesting. Is there a shift in the SEC from the East to West? I think I told you earlier, it's important that Alabama gets back to being dominant, being in front of the controlling the line of scrimmage, running the ball, defense, the brand that Alabama has sustained and put on. We need to get back to being dominant. So like Jeff Stapleton's comment, he's like, it's all about college, man. Yeah, it is, man. It is all about SEC. And speaking of, since we're talking about the SEC, Remember how I mentioned earlier how Alabama was kind of like the anchor in the SEC that everybody wants to talk about? Alabama carries so much weight and leverage. Let's talk about these SEC schedules. I mean, you're coming in, we're adding Texas to Oklahoma, and I said it before. Listen, there's got to be parity on these schedules. Like Alabama, we can't be playing. You look at Alabama's schedule compared to Georgia's schedule. I mean, like it is like night and day. Like we're playing Texas week 2. Georgia's supposed to play Oklahoma, but they canceled the game. I'm like, why'd you cancel the game? Just because they're coming to SEC? You didn't cancel the game for Alabama and Texas because they're coming to the SEC. Why is that? Because Alabama carries so much weight. You even look at all these draft punters. I think Paul Feinbaum said, oh, if you look at the Alabama game, Hendon Hooker should be the number 1 pick. Why? Because Alabama carries so much weight. But there does need to be some schedule parity in the SEC. So, Greg Sankey, if you're tuning in to Football University, put a comment in the student section. But, man, we've got to get some parity because I don't think it's fair. Alabama has to go through these dog fights. But, not to say that we don't take it, we don't embrace it. We like to go through the fire. This shows you how you get refined in the fire. That shows you how dominant you are. We take on these challenges. But you look at Georgia's because, they play like kudos to them. They do play Florida and I believe Tennessee back-to-back and maybe Kentucky. But everything else leading up to that is like Vandy, Missouri, Kentucky, Vandy, Missouri, like all these songs. You're like, what is going on? Like, but it is what it is. But to your point, I do think we need to have some SEC parity. Listen, the Bama fans going at Georgia. I like it. That brings me to my next point. I know I kind of covered it a few seconds ago about how Alabama carries so much leverage. And listen, Alabama is basically the standard when it comes to the SEC. Teams, they talk about playing Bama and the rivalries, and so all these teams say, oh, it's SEC, but when it comes to Alabama, they don't ever cheer for Alabama. They hate SEC. Look at Auburn. Auburn fans going to give us a hard time. You look at Tennessee fans going to give Alabama a hard time. You look at Georgia's going to give Bama a hard time. You look at LSU, Alabama. Like, do they really, it's like everybody hates Bama for some odd reason. But to me, that's why Alabama carries so much weight. And if you take Alabama out the SEC, it's kind of boring, So Alabama is college football. We are what keep it going. And the fan bases love going at it with Alabama. So we got a lot of Georgia talk in here. So them dogs, just like the same as Penske wants to get back to bring Bama to Bullet Ball. I think Saban wants to get back to bringing Bullet Ball, but at the end of the day, he wants to get back to winning the championship. And I know he respects, Kirby. He's proud of seeing his guys be successful. But if I know Coach Saban, the competitor that I know, being one of the world's top leaders, being a guy that instills confidence and bring the best out of you and wants you to be dominant and competitive, he's got to be, itching, can't wait to get out there and be dominant this year, taking on a new challenge. I think he ironed out some kinks with the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, really getting things, football guys that know, it's not rocket science. At the end of the day, football is football. You just got to whoop the guy in front of you, be dominant, stop the run the ball, have explosive plays. So make adjustments, put a spy on the quarterback, put a spy on Jaden Daniels. It's not that hard. So I think Saban kind of addressed that. And Alabama's going to get back, hopefully, to those being dominant. See a lot of Alabama-Georgia talk. The last thing Pollock should have done was embarrass Nick Saban to his face. Bama is coming. Yeah, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, we got to give Georgia their props. They won back-to-back national championships. So Georgia's, I mean, they can say whatever. Kirby can say whatever. They didn't play anybody in the championship game, but it is what it is. They made the plays to get there. So Alabama's got to be able to get back to that point. And I think it starts by winning the SEC West, or we got to be able to beat LSU, A&M, both of the Mississippi schools, Auburn. You know, when it comes to the SEC East, you know, that Tennessee game, the gloves have come off. You know, Tennessee have been kind of really intensifying this rivalry. We lost to them last year. They have the fireworks as soon as the field goal goes up. Then they pour salt on the wound and play Dixieland Delight. Not only then, but then Alabama basketball played them there. It was a physical game, and then they played Dixieland Delight. So it's really becoming intense. So you look at that Tennessee, that third Saturday in October, having them in Tuscaloosa. Listen, we've got to be ready to go, be able to stop that offense, being able to be physical. And then the next year, we've got to be able to play them again. And then probably end up playing them probably twice, you know, maybe 3 times. You never know. Playing them in the SEC championship. Then you probably got a 12-team playoff. You could easily see them maybe in the semifinals or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how the 12-team playoff, how the SEC handles things, you know, how these different matchups play out. But, you know, I do think the SEC needs to get back to parity and having parity with the SEC schedule. That way we can be dominant when it comes to the 12-team playoffs. So I'm excited. So let's stay in the student section. William Brown said, Ellis, who could have beaten TCU? I agree with you, William Brown. I believe it's multiple SEC schools that could have beat. Gave Georgia at least a better game in the national championship. You look at Bama. I mean, I think Bama had the closest odds, I believe, to beat them. You look at Bryce Young and Will Anderson. You're giving us 3 weeks to prepare. We kind of got rid of some of the energy vampires on the team. We played those young guys. You look at that bowl game, Bryce was rolling. Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, Gibbs was rolling. Jermaine Burton, Ja'Cory Brooks. I mean, we were in our bag. So, you know, to your point, I think it was a lot of SEC, about 4 or 5 SEC schools that could have won the national championship. You know, me here at Football University, I'm an SEC guy. I think it should be all SEC teams. We should just separate and have the SEC playoff, and forget the rest of the country. Let's just have an SEC playoff. But, you know, I think that's what they're getting at in the 12-team playoff. So let's stay in the student section. Y'all are going in in the student section. Dogs fans in here. Listen, Dogs fans, number one Dogs fans, probably straight punk Coach Saban on live TV, man. That P word is a strong word, man. Listen, I mean, I know I see your point, but I think at the end of the day, I think Coach Saban being there, having to witness, you know, Georgia win their second national championship back-to-back, and, you know, Pollock did his thing to him, but at the same time, you know, I think Coach Saban can embrace it, and, you know, he can't control it. He did his best to try to get his team in, but I think Saban internalized it. You know, you look at a Coach Saban who's been so successful. You look at a Bill Belichick, that type of process-oriented competitor that he is. I'm quite sure Coach Saban internalized it from that flight from California all the way back to Tuscaloosa. I'm quite sure he was motivated to really have a lot of enthusiasm and energy on this football team. You know, you look at the spring training photo of Coach Saban just ready to chew somebody out. I'm glad to see that. That's the Coach Saban that I know. I need him kind of being more anal, more militant. And at the end of the day, that just keeps you young. Being around young people keeps you youthful, vibrant. So listen, to the Dogs fan, I mentioned Georgia. Y'all are doing y'all things, but I think Alabama and Coach Saban, I think he internalized that. and looked himself in the mirror and said, my team is lacking. We've got to be able to improve on these levels in order to get back to the national championship and the playoffs. So great point. Shouts out to the Dogs fans in the student section here at Football University. We welcome everybody in here. So let's stay in the student section. Y'all are on a roll. Let's go. Just say what it said. My grandma could have beat TCU easy pass for the national title. Oh my goodness. Let's see what Lori Caddell said. It's a roll of dice in Florida and Tennessee are having a good year and show up and play. Teams only consistently show up to play Bama. You know, that is so true. Like I said, Bama carries all the way. Bama, listen, teams might not, like Tennessee not going to play Kentucky the way they played Alabama. You know, everybody's going to bring their A game for Alabama. So Alabama, you got to be able to embrace it, still stay hungry, still keep that hunger and take that, you know, knowing you're getting everybody best, you need to internalize and bring that much better than the best. So you got to be able to be dominant in practice 24/7, having the right mindset, going out there with that dog killer mentality that which Alabama teams used to be in the past. You look at a Reuben Foster, a Mark Ingram, Rolando McClain, Dante Hightower. Shouts out to Hightower. He retired from the New England Patriots, but you look at D'Amico Ryan. I'm talking about physical, tenacious type of mindset. That's the type of Alabama football team that we need to have because we're getting everybody's best shot. So let's stay in the student section. William Bryan says, probably going to eat them words. I hope he does. I hope Bama, like I said, Coach Saban internalize it and we win the Natty. Jeff Roy brings up a great point. Like I said, Bama carries so much weight. Bama is the standard of college football. Everybody wants to be Bama. And everybody, Bama grinds everybody beans. Everybody wants to beat Bama because Bama is the standard. Let's stay in the student section. Y'all are on the roll. The Dog fans. The committee didn't want to see UGA humiliate Bama. Listen, I understand the perspective, but listen, to your point, I don't think if it was one team, I would say that there's one team Georgia did not want to see. When, like I say, everybody brings their A game versus Alabama. I still think it's one team Georgia did not want to see. And them knowing that they didn't have to see Bama, Bryce, Will Anderson, having a couple weeks off, that's the one matchup they knew they did not want to see. You get the revenge factor, losing the national championship, meeting back up. Listen, to your point, I see you say Georgia will humiliate Bama. I think humiliate is a pretty strong word. I think Alabama had the best odds to probably match Georgia. You look at defensively, Brian Branch, Jordan Battle. If we get in the right scheme, stopping the run, I think Bama presents a lot of issues for Georgia. But shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm not Doctor Strange with all the metaverses and different, scenarios. But hopefully Alabama gets back to the SEC championship this year. That way we can get enough of talking on Twitter and we can see it on the field versus the Bulldogs. So I love the talk out here between the Dogs and the Bama fans. Stephen Hicks says, after we win the job, I want Saban to walk over. Man, and be slapped. Saban, I don't think Saban's going to do that. At the end of the day, we want to, you want to respect, your opponent. We want to do things in the first class way. That's something Mal Moore, Bear Bryant, that's what we do at Alabama. Us being the standard, we do things in the first class way. So instead of him physically punishing him, why don't our football team just physically do it and be dominant on the field? To me, that's more, and us winning the championship at the end, to me, that beats any physical harm to David Pollock. So let's just do it on the field, Bama. So let's stay in the student section. This is a great take right here. IMG would have given Georgia a better game, really. Let's be honest. Let's go. Y'all are going in on the student section. Let's just go. let's just go. Let's go here. Y'all forget TCU beat a tough Michigan team to get there. Listen, number one dogs is in here. Bob Roos said Georgia can even humiliate Ohio State. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about Georgia. Georgia Bulldogs, number one dogs. You hear on the football university with all these Bama fans. I like how you coming in here. But let's talk about that Georgia game. And let's make it all connect to each other, especially when it comes to Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. You hear all these NFL experts talking about, oh, CJ Stroud, he's so good. Oh, he's so good. I mean, you just look at the Georgia game, and I'm like, yeah, he played a great game. But to me, if you look at his Georgia game versus Bryce's Georgia game in the SEC championship the year before, it's no comparison. I think Bryce had 4 TDs, like 400 some yards against an even better Georgia defense. Like, you look at that Georgia defense in the SEC championship, I think Bryce went up against tougher competition. You look at Trayvon Walker, Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter was on there. Who else was on that? Of course, you got Ringo at corner. That defense, I believe, Georgia defense last year was more impressive than this year's Georgia team. So in my 2 cents, if you're going to put so much weight on Georgia, that Georgia game that CJ Stroud had, then you need to go look at the Georgia game that Bryce had versus against the so-called number one team in history. So I had to bring that up because that's what we do here at Football University. Since we're talking college ball, William Ross said Michigan tough. Listen, Michigan, oh man, Big Blue, I mean, that game versus TCU was, it was just embarrassing. Y'all are going in. So let's stay in the student section. Y'all, Georgia fans, y'all are going in. So before y'all keep them coming. Why y'all keep the comments coming? let's go to 6-0. Let's get away from some of the Georgia. No, let's take a pause. Let's answer this question first. Matt, how's Jay Milroe progressing with the receiver league seats expectations this year? Shouts out to you, 6-0. We discussed Milroe earlier, talking about the viral play with the great ball placement. I think it's important for the quarterbacks. You look at a Milroe, not to try to be Bryce, but try to be the best version of Jalen Milroe. You look at Ty Simpson, I think he needs to be the best version of Ty Simpson and run the offense, how they run him, get us in the right play effectively. You get the keys to the ignition. You need to be able to make the plays every time. You're the leader. You need to put the ball around players and make them be successful. So let's go back into this to the section. It is going on. It is Icebox says, I can't disagree. OSU was a tougher team, but sure, should have been the final game. However, Georgia knows OSU had easy schedule as always. No real SEC tough teams. It is what it is. I'm not going to take away against Georgia. Georgia beat Tennessee. I mean, that game was kind of one of the biggest games of the year. It was going to determine who was going to Atlanta, and Georgia's defense, they handed it to Tennessee, and I think that's where Alabama's got to get back to being dominant. I mentioned earlier the defensive tackles, the defensive line. We've got to be able to win up front. You look at Georgia. Georgia's been able to be dominant up front. You look at a Jalen Carter. You look at a Trayvon Walker. Like, they're able to do it with their talent. So Bama's got to make sure our talent is controlling the line of scrimmage, being dominant. So great point. Let's stay in the student section. Bama owns the Georgia Dome. Yeah, hopefully we need to get back to the Georgia Dome or Mercedes-Benz Stadium, whatever. We need to get back to it. Great point right here. Bama plays Texas, Tennessee, LSU at home. Come get some payback. Then we'll take you out in dogs in the SEC championship game. Listen, it's going to be interesting with the 12-team playoff. Listen, I think the SEC gets at least 12 teams. I think the SEC probably gets 5, maybe 6 teams. Just off the top of my head, because this is what we do here at Football University. Let's pick the 5 teams. I'm going to go Bama, Georgia, I'm going to go Bama, Tennessee, possibly Georgia, because the reason I'm holding out on Georgia, I don't know what that quarterback situation is. So I'm going to go to the sures that I know. Bama, I think Tennessee, I think South Carolina is going to be tough. I think you look at LSU, Jaden Daniels, Brian Kelly, you look at LSU, that's 4. And the 5th team, probably a Georgia, maybe an Ole Miss. I don't see a Florida as of yet. I definitely see South Carolina making some noise. So you look at the SEC, easily 4 or 5 teams in the college 12-team playoff. I think there will be the top 4 teams do get first, 2 weeks or weeks buys in the tournament, where the teams 5 through 12 play each other, and then the first top 4 seeds get buys. So it's gonna be interesting. So I got I don't know. I need the Georgia fans to mention about their situation in the quarterback. I think Beck is the guy, but I haven't done enough about Georgia to really put them. I know South Carolina, I know they were good. I think you look at what they do, having the quarterback come back. I think they have they present a lot of challenges. So I think that East, like I said, the SEC East, the dynamics, they're kind of shifting. You look at Bama being dominant in the past, where it was just Alabama, LSU. The SEC West was so dominant. Then you have the influx of A&M, and so that kind of made things a little bit different. Still, the SEC West has been so dominant, but the past couple of years, the past 2 years, it's been the SEC East led by Georgia. Winning back-to-back national championships. Then you look at Tennessee coming on with Josh Heupel with that explosive offense. Then you look at South Carolina. I mean, the SEC East is making strides, so it's important that the SEC West is going to be a dogfight. You look at Bama, LSU, A&M, Ole Miss, Arkansas. It's challenging. So, like I said, this is going to be an interesting year for the SEC and football. But this is what we're here to do at Football University. Football U, it's all about football here. Let's say so we got okay, so perfect. So let's get to my next topic. So I kind of want to bounce back to the NFL. So we talked about the draft, Bryce, and the pro days. We talked about so much about college, and Jeff Saban, to hold on to that comment, I want to talk about the NFL real quick. So they had the NFL league meetings in Phoenix, Arizona. So owners and coaches were there. But I want to shout out DeMeco Ryans. I want to give DeMeco Ryans his flowers. Is finally able to hear DeMeco Ryans finally talk, because he wasn't at any of the pro days, but he said they had people there. But he made an interesting comment. They asked him, how does Bryce Young affect, does Bryce Young's size have any effect on you wanting to draft him? And DeMeco says no. He says no, it has no effect. He's looking to add a young quarterback. And if you're the Houston Texans, shouts out to H-Town, Texas. Listen, if you're Houston and somehow Carolina, I'm gonna say it, sorry, if they drop the ball and don't take Bryce Young, if you're the Houston Texans, you gotta be like, oh my goodness, like it could not have worked out perfectly for you. You don't have to trade up for Bryce, and you're able to get him at number 2. Like, you gotta be elated. So you look at the Houston Texans. I do think the Texans do need to trade up. Not only do the Panthers, the Panthers made the move. I think if you got your guy, I said earlier, you don't need to go with the safe pick. you need to go with the right now pick, the pick that made you, if you fall in love with somebody, you need to go get them. And to me, that dynamic playmaker is Bryce Young. That's the only person I'm going to trade up for. To me, if Bryce is not yet, and I think you look at the Houston Texans, Nick Casario, D'Amico Ryans, they have the number 2 and the 12 pick. I think they lead the league in compensatory picks. Maybe they try to put a package together. I think if you're the Houston Texans, if Bryce Young's your guy, go get him. Like, go get traded up to number 1. Go get your quarterback. All of Houston will be excited. You look at the AFC South with going against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence. You hear rumblings about the Tennessee Titans. Maybe look at a quarterback. You look at the Indianapolis Colts. You get the Jim Irsay, because if Jim Irsay is working out Bryce and CJ Stroud in California, they might be trying to trade up to number 1. So you don't know. You need to go get your quarterback. So and I said that, and I mentioned the Houston Texans. I talked about D'Amico Ryans, just great quotes. Since we're talking about the Texans, I'm kind of going to go rapid fire real quick. Another team I think that can really benefit, kind of have an impact, and I know they're not one of, the Panthers or the Texans, but I was thinking about other teams that can benefit, really have an impact and make a lot of noise, and not only in their division, but for the longevity of the next 10 years. And I'm saying I think the Houston Texans need to be aggressive. If Bryce is your guy, go get him. I'm going to say the Detroit Lions. I talked about Jameson Williams. I mean, you drafted Jameson Williams last year. I know you got Jared Goff. You got the number 6 pick, I believe, and the number 18 pick. If you can go get your guy, Bryce Young, I mean, say Carolina, passes on Bryce Young and go CJ Stroud, and let's say Houston Texans get Will Anderson. I mean, if you're the Detroit Lions, I think you make the move for your quarterback, and you kind of have a Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith type of tenureship where you got this young, talented team. Aaron Rodgers is no longer in the division. Kirk Cousins with the Minnesota Vikings. You look at Chicago Bears with Justin Fields. They're going to try to make noise. But if you're the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, Jameson Williams, Amon St. Brown, you get a running back. You got a really good Panay Sewell. Sorry, excuse me, pardon me. You got a young nucleus and Bryce. You don't have to rush them, but you can let Jared Goff, maybe take the lead reins for the first 8 games and then bring on Bryce and get in the play. Like, you could make some noise, with Bryce Young. So they maybe want to get to that point about Bryce. Listen, high impact teams, you look at the Texans, if Bryce is your guy, go trade him. And I want to shout out D'Amico. And if you're the Lions, go trade up. Also, we talked about, the SEC schedule, the SEC parity, SEC West, East shifts. We talked about Hugh Freeze. What is the next point I want to mention? We talked about the Colts. AJ McCarron is doing his thing in the XFL. I mean, the XFL, like, I think he's undefeated being there with the St. Louis Battlehawks. I mean, AJ is making noise where he's like, he's basically the poster child for the XFL. So, I said it again. I want the XFL to play the USFL. I think that would be so cool, kind of have those guys go at it. But before we wind it down, since we're speaking about the NFL, and I mentioned earlier about the NFL League meetings in Phoenix. Another thing that came out, they voted on allowing the number 0. They allowed the number 0. Last year they went to single digits. They allowed that, so you had a lot of guys wearing single digits, but they allowed the number 0. And I want to shout out Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is going to be wearing the number 0 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know he was a Falcon, did so many great things with the Falcons, him and Julio, but he had that incident. He did his time, and now he's back. And I think he's ready to showcase himself and it made me bring it to my next point. Top 2 route runners, to me, Saban era, I got to start number 1, Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is that guy. Number 2, I'm talking about just pure route runnings, change your pace, in and out of breaks, being able to manipulate defenders, like getting off the press jam. Calvin Ridley was a problem. And I think I go Coop 1, Ridley 2, and probably Smitty 3, maybe with a little Waddle Judy. But it's a lot of guys. So I just want to give, not only Jameson Williams his flowers, but Calvin Ridley, happy to see him back. And he's rocking the number 0. So let's get in the comments real quick before we wind down. Jeff Roy said Georgia got to go to Tennessee. Yeah, I don't know Georgia's quarterback situation. I know number 1 Dogs was in here, so if he comes back to football university, give me some information. Listen, Bama does have to be better than everybody else to clean up the stupid mistakes. Yeah, no more penalties. Like, we got to get back to having that standard, being dominant, knowing what to do, having it mentally, intellectually, and being dominant, being better than the best, because we know we're going to get everybody's best. So I think Coach Saban's addressed that. So shouts out to Nick Saban Jr., Roll Tide. So this has been another episode of Football U, or Football University. For all the football heads, I want to thank everybody in the student section. Nick Saban Jr., Icebox, everybody hit that like, subscribe button. Stephen Hicks, Lori Caddell, Spencer, 6-0. Number 1 Dogs was in here talking major cash. Jeff Roy, Jeff Stapleton. Shouts out to you all being here at Football University in the student section. Y'all were amazing. Another great show. Hey, listen, come back next week. Same channel, same time, here with me, Caddell at Football University. Y'all have another great weekend. I'll see y'all next week. See ya.